Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, Your Majesty.
Your Majesty, lovely to see you again.
Back again.
Oh, it's a great pleasure.
Anyway.
With the resignation of Liz Truss, Britain is now set to have its fifth Prime Minister in just 6 years. Ever since the Leave victory in the 2016 EU referendum, the Tories appear to have been in absolute shambles, and Liz Truss, although only elected as Prime Minister in September, has resigned already, just 6 weeks later, and has now made history as the shorting service British Prime Minister in history. Back when Liz Truss became Tory leader and Prime Minister in September, if anyone said she would have resigned before November, no one would have believed you. No one saw this coming. The disastrous mini-budget was the end of her, the beginning and the end. If only she had not done this mini-budget and pursued the same economic policies, this never would have happened. Now obviously the Tory membership need to elect a new leader and Prime Minister again for the country. Second time this year. Well, second time in just a few weeks, isn't it? A few months. And to my amazement today, I thought it was a joke. Boris looks likely to be putting his hat in the ring to be Prime Minister again, and this absolutely astonishes me. Now I've got to be clear, I don't actually think Boris will become the Prime Minister again. I can't see it. I'm going to explain why. I just don't think it's going to happen. But if he was to win, I think it would damage the Tories more than can be imagined. His three main reasons why a Boris comeback would ruin the Conservative Party. The Partygate scandal. It seems like a lifetime ago now that Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak and other senior Tory MPs were all fined by the police for attending a party during lockdown. The scandal known as Partygate. Boris Johnson and his allies were accused of lying about the event being permitted as a work meeting. The aftermath of this, in the knowledge that millions of people all over the country were missing seeing loved ones, couldn't do anything, couldn't go to the cinema, couldn't go to the park, couldn't see friends or family. People couldn't attend funerals or couldn't sit next to their loved ones at funerals. When people were dying in hospital, they couldn't visit them. The Tory government, or some in the Tory government, had this lax attitude to the rules. Boris was then subject to a confidence vote by his own MPs, in which a huge 41% of his MPs voted against him. The Partygate scandal alone, in my opinion, will cause millions in this country not to vote for the Tories at the general election, the next one, whenever it is, especially if Boris is the Prime Minister. On a personal level, after the first lockdown, I don't think we should have any more lockdowns, but that's a conversation for another day. The fact that our elites, the Prime Minister and others, were socialising during these events, during lockdown, is enough to mean that I won't vote for the Tories at the next general election. Not saying I'm going to vote Labour, but the Tories won't be getting my vote, and I know I'm not alone in that. The second reason, choosing to elect the same leader who was only removed a couple of months ago by his own MPs, is something out of a banana republic. If the average Briton was to read about an event in an African country where corruption was large, that a Prime Minister had been removed, but then a couple of months later he had somehow managed to get his way back in, people would be laughing, joking, eyes to the heaven, oh, what a mess of a country. But there's a prospect of that happening here in the United Kingdom, which is a complete and total embarrassment. Britain politically is an embarrassment on the global stage. But this would just top things off. It would be the cherry on top. Boris Johnson cannot be... It doesn't even bear thinking about that Boris could actually become Prime Minister again. You can probably hear the astonishment in my voice. As I said, over 40% of this man's MPs voted against him. We had Tory MPs, the Chancellor at the time, it seems like a long time ago, but Sajid Javid was Chancellor back in July or August, speaking in the House of Commons against Boris Johnson staying on as Prime Minister. And now there's a lot can happen in a day in politics, in British politics right now, but let's see what happens tomorrow if Boris announces either way if he's standing or not. The votes have to be in by Monday, I believe, and that everyone standing needs 100 MPs to back them, based on the current rules. The Tories have less than 400 MPs, so only 3 people at most can stand, as far as I can believe. And if Boris is to run and gets more than 100 MPs, this would be some comeback, put it that way. But I digress. The third reason is the Chris Pincher affair. It seems like a lifetime ago now that the Chris Pincher affair occurred, but it really isn't in reality. It's just that so much has happened in British politics with the Queen's death as well, on a separate matter, that these things seem a lot longer ago than they actually were. Chris Pincher was suspended from his duties as an MP after allegations he was groping other men, and apparently there had been previous allegations made against this man. Boris Johnson initially made out he was not aware of any of these previous allegations, but this turned out to be false, and despite knowing these allegations, Pincher was promoted to Deputy Chief Whip. A fair argument could be heard that re-electing Boris Johnson would mean that the Conservative Party does not take sexual abuse seriously. Although these are only allegations made against Chris Pincher, Boris Johnson initially denying any knowledge of these allegations is not a good look and could be seriously damaging going forward. As I say, I don't think Boris is going to come back. I don't think he's going to be Prime Minister. But if he became Prime Minister again, this is my prediction, many Tory MPs would not stand for it. They would resign and call by-elections, or defect to other parties. A vote of no confidence would be had in the government, which is likely to be successful, and a general election would be called, in which, I think, despite how much of a mess the Labour Party is, and they are a mess, the Tories are worse right now, but the Labour Party aren't doing anything special. They're keeping their head down right now, which is quite sensible. I think the uninspiring Labour Party would win, and we'd have our first Labour government since the 2000s. What do you think of my analysis, and what do you think was going to happen in the next day, the next week, the next month in British politics? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for listening. Bye.